The sun leans across the stone horizon, and shadows begin their slow procession down the pyramid. For a few trembling moments, light itself becomes a serpent, sliding step by step until its head meets the carved stone of Kukulcán. The crowd gasps. Some whisper that the god has returned. Others only stare, caught between awe and silence, unsure what they are truly witnessing. This scene has played out for centuries at Chichén Itzá, and yet is more than an ancient spectacle of stone and sky. It is a message written in light, a riddle that refuses to be solved by mere calculation. Was this only the genius of Maya astronomy, or the sign of something greater, a descent of wisdom from realms beyond? We are drawn to such questions not because they promise easy answers, but because they echo something hidden in us. The descent of the Feathered Serpent is not only a cosmic event, it is an interior drama. Light carves its path down the stairway of the pyramid, just as truth carves its path down the stairway of the human soul. Each shadow, each flicker of brilliance, is a reminder that mystery is alive and it waits for us. Ancient voices spoke of gods who descended, taught, and then vanished into the heavens with a promise to return. But perhaps their true return is not through the clouds or in machines of fire. Perhaps their return is in every human heart that learns to listen, to awaken, to embody the divine gift of knowledge. Myths, after all, are not fossils of forgotten minds. They are living mirrors. In them we see not only what once was, but what forever is. This is the threshold where our journey begins. Between stone and starlight, between the memory of civilizations and the longing of our own age, lies a story that refuses to fade. It is the story of descent and ascent, of gods and mortals, of knowledge given and forgotten and given again. It is a story that belongs to the Maya, to the Aztec, to every seeker who has ever lifted their eyes to the heavens and asked, who came before us, and what do they still want to teach? And so, we step onto the stairway. The light is already moving. The serpent of brilliance begins its slow descent, and if we dare to follow it, perhaps we will find not only the mysteries of the ancients, but the secret chambers of our own becoming. Chapter 1. The Myth and the Archetype. The myths of ancient peoples are never merely the stories of others. They are our own stories written in different tongues, carved in a stone, sung in chants beneath unfamiliar stars. When we hear of a feathered serpent descending from the heavens to guide humanity, we may imagine it as distant folklore, but the image lives already in the depths of our psyche. Carl Jung called this vast inheritance of images the collective unconscious, a subterranean river of symbols and archetypes that flows beneath all cultures, shaping our dreams and our destinies. To the Maya and the Aztec, Quetzalcoatl, known also as Kukulcán, was not simply a deity with wings and scales. He was the teacher, the bringer of wisdom, the one who descended to lift humanity into new patterns of life. This figure of the divine messenger, who comes from above, offers light, and returns again, is not unique to Mesoamerica. We find it in Hermes carrying messages from Olympus, in Prometheus descending with fire, and the Christ who comes from heaven, teaches and ascends. What we are seeing is not a coincidence of cultures, but an archetype, the eternal drama of descent and return. Joseph Campbell described this universal drama as the monomyth, the hero's journey that appears across the globe. The hero receives a call, crosses thresholds, descends into darkness, finds a gift, and returns to the community transformed. Whether embodied in a serpent of light slithering down the stairway of Chichén Itzá, or in a prophet emerging from the desert, the structure is the same. Myths, in Campbell's words, are public dreams, and dreams, Jung reminded us, are private myths. Both belong to the same fabric of the soul. When we stand before the pyramid at the equinox and watch the serpent of shadow and brilliance descend, we are not simply witnessing ancient astronomy. We are stepping into a stage where the human psyche performs its oldest play, the descent of wisdom into matter, the teaching of humanity, the return to the sky with a promise that what is divine never truly abandons us. The Maya enacted in stone what the psyche enacts in vision, the archetype of the guide, the master, the savior. Jung would tell us that such images arise because they are rooted in the deepest patterns of human experience. Every culture has known longing for guidance. Every soul has felt abandoned and then redeemed. Thus, the psyche projects these eternal dramas onto gods, onto heroes, onto beings that come from the stars. The question is not whether Quetzalcoatl was real in the way we demand of history, but whether the image is real in the sense Jung meant, an undeniable fact of the inner world, shaping action and belief as powerfully as any external event. Yet myths are not only mirrors of inner states, they're also maps. They orient us in the vast landscape of existence. The descent of Kukulcán may show us the possibility that higher knowledge can enter the human realm, but it also warns us that such knowledge departs if it is not honored. The cycles of his coming and going are not only cosmic rhythms, but psychological ones. Times when insight floods our being, and times when the light seems withdrawn, leaving us in darkness until we remember, until we prepare the temple again for its return. Consider the serpent itself, a creature that sheds its skin, renews itself, glides between worlds of earth and sky. The feathers speak of the heavens, the scales of the ground. Here the archetype fuses opposites, the celestial and the terrestrial, the spiritual and the material. Jung named this union of opposites the Koniunctio, the sacred marriage, and saw in it the heart of individuation, the process by which a human being becomes whole. In Quetzalcoatl, we see not merely a god descending, but the eternal reminder that we too are called to weave heaven and earth within our own being. Campbell observed that in myth, the hero often receives a gift that is not for himself alone, but must be brought back to the people. The descent is never only personal, it is communal. The master descends, teaches, and departs so that the community may be transformed. The archetype insists that wisdom is not hoarded but given, not clutched in isolation but offered in service. In the story of Kukulcán, we find again the eternal lesson. What descends into us must flow through us. Knowledge becomes wisdom only when it becomes gift. The Maya built their myth into stone so that it could not be forgotten. Every equinox, the light itself would remember for them. What we moderns must ask is whether we too will remember. Do we see in the descending serpent only a curiosity for tourists, or do we feel the archetypes stirring in us? The call to open ourselves to the descent of wisdom, to carry it, to share it, and to let it return to the sky with gratitude. Myths do not die. They sleep until someone dares to live them again. And so, the myth of the feathered serpent is not an ancient superstition, but a living archetype, reminding us of our capacity to receive light and to let it move through us. It is one expression of a universal pattern that binds Maya to Greek, Hebrew to Hindu, and modern seeker to ancient priest. Jung's insight, Campbell's vision, the Maya's stone, they converge here. The myth lives because the archetype lives, and the archetype lives because it is part of us. Thus we begin our exploration not with proof or with history, but with symbol. For what the ancients gave us is not a chronology, but a mirror, Quetzalcoatl descends and ascends still, not in the sky, but in the depths of our being. And if we dare to watch with more than our eyes, we may find that the serpent of light has always been waiting to carve its path again, down the stairway of our own soul. Chapter 2, Pacal and the Inner Vessel. In the humid depths of the Mexican jungle, hidden for centuries beneath the ruins of Palenque, lies a tomb that continues to unsettle both historians and seekers alike. When archaeologists opened the burial chamber of the Maya ruler Pacal in the 1950s, they discovered a stone lid that has since become one of the most contested images in the entire dialogue between ancient archaeology and modern imagination. Carved upon the sarcophagus is a figure of Pacal himself, but what he is doing has ignited a fire of interpretation. To the eyes of Eric von Daniken, whose book Chariots of the Gods would ignite global fascination with the idea of ancient astronauts, the carving was unmistakable. Pacal was seated in what looked like a rocket. His body was inclined forward like an astronaut in a capsule, his hands manipulating controls, his face pressed into something resembling an oxygen mask. The flames and ornaments beneath him resembled propulsion, as though the Maya king were not descending into death, but launching toward the stars. For von Daniken, this was not symbolic art, but literal evidence of extraterrestrial contact, proof that human civilization had been visited and guided by beings from beyond. But myth seldom yields to one interpretation. If we look with other eyes, Pacal is not an astronaut at all, but a soul in transition. He is poised between worlds, his posture bent not in technological manipulation, but in spiritual surrender. The ornaments that von Daniken called flames are also the roots of the great world tree, the ceiba that for the Maya connected the underworld, the earthly plane, and the heavens. Pacal is shown not as a pilot leaving the earth, but as a voyager moving through the cosmic tree of life. The lid of his sarcophagus is a map of initiation, a vision of death as passage, body as vessel, spirit as traveler. It is here that two truths meet: the literal imagination that longs for visitors from the stars, and the symbolic imagination that sees in every carving a guide for the human journey. What matters is not to choose one and discard the other, but to recognize that both arise from the same hunger, the desire to know that we are not alone, that we are accompanied, guided, and called beyond the narrow boundaries of flesh. The body, after all, is itself a vessel. The Maya buried their kings with jewels and masks, not to anchor them in death, but to aid their passage into a higher realm. The sarcophagus of Pacal is not only a tomb, but a ship, carved in stone, suggesting that the flesh is itself a kind of capsule in which the soul undertakes its great voyage. The ancients knew what we often forget, that matter is not the end of spirit, but its vehicle. Here, the Urantia book offers a profound resonance. In its vast cosmology, each human being carries within them a fragment of divinity known as the thought adjuster, a mysterious presence that pilots the soul toward higher realities. This adjuster is not a machine, but it functions as a navigator, silently aligning us with the eternal while respecting our freedom. If Pacal's body was depicted as a capsule, the Urantia book would say that every body is such a capsule, carrying a divine traveler within. The adjuster is the true astronaut, guiding us through the dense atmospheres of time toward the open spaces of eternity. In this light, the image of Pacal takes on a new dimension. He is not only a king entombed or an astronaut departing. He is a symbol of each of us, poised at the intersection of flesh and spirit, bearing within us the pilot who longs to steer us home. The tomb is not the end, it is the launch pad. The stone lid is not only a marker of death, but a revelation of life's hidden architecture. Gurdjieff, the enigmatic mystic of the 20th century, spoke often of the human condition as mechanical. He claimed that most people live as machines, repeating patterns, driven by unconscious impulses, asleep to their higher possibilities. To awaken, one must become aware of the machine and discover the inner driver. In Pacal's carving, we see this paradox embodied. The man is within a vessel, yet he is also its operator. Are we not the same, bound by habits, yet capable of awakening to a greater will? The controls in Pacal's hands, whether literal or symbolic, remind us that the journey of the soul requires attention, intention, and the choice to be conscious. Von Daniken may have seen technology, but the mystic sees psychology. The rocket is not a spacecraft of metal, but a symbol of the human organism, designed to carry consciousness through this atmosphere of existence. The flames are not fire, but transformation. The mask is not oxygen, but breath itself, the sacred rhythm that unites body and spirit. The journey is not away from Earth, but deeper into it, and through it into the stars. Every myth, Jung reminds us, is a projection of inner reality. The image of Pacal in his vessel is an archetype of transition, the eternal story of a soul leaving one state and entering another. It is Persephone descending into the underworld. It is Osiris sailing on the boat of Ra. It is Christ entering the tomb and emerging in light. The Maya carved their version in stone, and it whispers to us still, death is not annihilation, but passage. Life itself is not stagnation, but voyage. To read Pacal's lid is to read ourselves. We are each seated in a vessel, navigating a world dense with mystery, pulled by gravity yet beckoned by stars. Within us burns the possibility of awakening, of realizing that we are not merely machines, but pilgrims guided by the divine navigator. The adjuster within is both silent and insistent, urging us toward love, truth, and beauty. Gurdjieff would say, awaken to the fact that you are asleep. The Maya would say, remember that you are on a journey. The Urantia book would say, listen to the still pilot within. Thus Pacal is more than a king of Palenque. He is a mirror of the human condition. His tomb is our body, his carving our map, his journey our own. Whether we see him as astronaut, mystic, or archetype, he tells us the same thing. We are travelers, and the vessel is already prepared. The question is whether we will awaken to its purpose. And so, standing before the image, we must ask, are we merely passengers in the capsule of our days, or will we take the controls, guided by the divine presence within, and set our course toward the greater light? Pacal's stone still whispers its answer, across centuries of silence, into the chambers of our listening souls. Chapter 3, The Time That Breathes. The Maya were not merely architects of stone, they were architects of time. Long before mechanical clocks measured the hours and seconds that enslave our days, the Maya gazed into the heavens and saw rhythm where others saw only darkness. They traced the arc of Venus, the dance of the moon, the eclipses that startled the sky, and out of these observations they wove a calendar not only to mark harvests and rains, but to reveal the pulse of eternity. To modernize, a calendar is a practical tool. It tells us when to pay bills, when to schedule meetings, when to celebrate birthdays. But for the Maya, time was not a container to fill. It was a living being to whom reverence was due. Their calendar was not a cage of dates, but a mirror of the cosmos. Each day carried a quality, a flavor of meaning, a resonance with the cycles of the heavens. To live in harmony with the calendar was to live in harmony with the universe itself. Among their most astonishing insights was the recognition of cycles that extended beyond ordinary lifetimes. The Maya tracked the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of the Earth's axis that completes itself only every 26,000 years. They marked patterns of Venus with precision that rivals our telescopes. They calculated long counts spanning over 5 millennia. For them, time was not a straight line rushing toward oblivion, but a spiral, a wheel of return. Here we meet Mircea Eliade's notion of the eternal return. In his studies of myth and ritual, Eliade observed that ancient cultures lived in a time that was sacred, cyclical, and renewable. Every festival, every ritual was a return to the beginning, a recreation of the primordial moment when the gods set the world in motion. By returning to that beginning, the community renewed its existence, tasted again the freshness of origin. The Maya, with their elaborate cycles, embodied this truth. To know time is to know how to return, to participate again and again in the dawn of creation. But what does it mean for us? We, who live by digital clocks and deadlines, often feel that time is a tyrant, pushing us forward without mercy. We imagine ourselves trapped between a past we cannot change and a future we cannot predict. Yet the Maya remind us that time breathes. It does not only march, it pulses. It expands and contracts. It circles back. It invites us to see repetition not as monotony, but as rhythm. Every sunrise is both the same and new. Every heartbeat is repetition, yet without it we cannot live. Viktor Frankl, who endured the abyss of a concentration camp, discovered that even in the cruelest conditions, meaning was possible. Time, for him, was not simply the endless succession of suffering, but the opportunity to respond, to choose an attitude, to create meaning. He wrote that life is never unbearable by circumstance alone, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. The Maya calendar, in its cyclical wisdom, offers a similar lesson. Each cycle, each return, is a chance to re-enter meaning, to choose again, to live the present as if it were eternity unfolding. Imagine the Maya priest watching Venus rise after months of absence. To him, this was not only an astronomical event, but the return of a god, a reappearance of beauty after hiddenness. To us, watching the same planet, it might be nothing more than a dot of light. What makes the difference is meaning. For the priest, time was thick with significance. For us, it is often empty seconds. Frankl would remind us that meaning is not given but created, not imposed from without, but chosen within. The Maya remind us that the cosmos itself provides a canvas upon which we may paint meaning. Eliade saw in ritual the power to abolish profane time and recover sacred time. In the festival, the past is not past, but present again. The participants are not remembering creation. They are experiencing it anew. In this sense, every cycle is an opportunity for rebirth. The Maya long count did not end in apocalypse on December 21st, 2012, as sensationalists claimed. It simply turned a page, began a new cycle, opened a new possibility. The end of a cycle is never destruction, but renewal. In our own lives, how often do we mistake transitions for endings? A job lost, a relationship broken, a year passed, we see only finality. But the Maya whisper that every ending is a turning, every closing a return. The will does not stop, it breathes. And if we learn to breathe with it, we may discover that eternity is not elsewhere, but here, hidden in the pulse of the present. The practice, then, is to live the present as eternity. This does not mean ignoring past and future, but seeing them folded into now. The repetition of daily tasks can become ritual if we infuse them with awareness. The cycle of breath, in, out, can become a meditation on eternal return. Each morning is not only another day, but a return to creation, a chance to begin again. Each night is not only closure, but descent into the mystery from which dawn will rise. The Maya calendar becomes pedagogy, a teacher reminding us that time is not against us, but with us, that cycles are not prisons, but invitations. Eliade's eternal return and Frankl's search for meaning converge here, in the possibility of transforming every moment into significance. Eternity is not a future reward. It is the depth of the present. And perhaps this is why the Maya were such careful keepers of time. They knew that to forget the rhythm is to forget the sacred. To lose the cycles is to lose the sense that life is always renewable. They left us their glyphs and codices not to impress us with calculation, but to remind us that time itself can be holy. The great wheel turns, and in its turning we are offered another chance to awaken. So when we look upon their calendar, let us not see only mathematics. Let us see a mirror of the cosmos breathing, a spiral reminding us of our own capacity to renew. Each cycle is a gift, each return a chance to live again. The Mayan knew this, Eliade described it, Frankl lived it, and we are invited to embody it. For in the end, time is not a tyrant, but a teacher, and if we listen, we may learn to breathe eternity with every breath we take. Chapter 4, The 7 Caves. Beneath the myths of the Aztec and their ancestors lies a story as old as humanity itself. The tale of emergence from the womb of the earth. Chichén Itzá, the place of the 7 caves, is remembered in legend as the origin of tribes, the cavern from which humanity emerged into the light of the world. To archaeologists, it may be a physical site near Teotihuacán, with its subterranean chambers radiating from a central cavern. To mythologists, it is a symbol of birth and belonging. To seekers, it is a mirror of the inner landscape, where 7 chambers of the soul wait to be explored. The cave has always carried ambiguous meaning. It is a place of refuge and a place of terror, a shelter from storms and a descent into darkness. In myth, caves are wombs of rebirth, but also mouths of the underworld. To enter a cave is to step outside the ordinary world, to leave behind the daylight of certainty and descend into the realm of shadows and echoes. Jung, who traced the language of the psyche through dreams and symbols, saw in such images the archetype of the descent into the unconscious, the journey every soul must take to meet its hidden truths. Chichén Itzá's 7 chambers, then, become more than geographic detail. They are an archetypal map. They suggest that within the human being there are multiple layers of depth, stages of initiation, thresholds to cross. 7 has always been a sacred number. 7 heavens, 7 days of creation, 7 seals, 7 notes of the scale. Here it speaks of completeness, of a fullness of being that is reached only by traversing the hidden corridors within. In Eastern traditions, the 7 chakras chart the flow of energy from the base of the spine to the crown of the head. Each chakra is a gate, a center of vitality and consciousness. To ascend through them is to transform, to integrate body, emotion, mind, and spirit. In the Jewish mystical tradition of the Kabbalah, the Sefirot unfold as emanations of divine qualities, a ladder between heaven and earth. 7 of them are often emphasized as the attributes that structure human and cosmic harmony. These parallels are not accidental. Across cultures, humanity has sensed that the path to wholeness requires passing through 7 thresholds, 7 stations of the soul. So we may read Chichén Itzá not as a literal cave, but as an inner topography. Each chamber is a depth within us, a place where memory, instinct, fear, and potential are stored. To descend into the 7 caves is to face ourselves, to confront what is buried, and to discover what is waiting to be born. Just as the tribes emerged from the cavern into the light of the world, so we must emerge from our unconscious into the light of awareness, carrying with us the treasures and lessons hidden below. The first cave may be the body itself, the raw vitality that grounds us. Here dwell our instincts, our survival, our roots in the earth. It is dark, primal, sometimes frightening, but without it we cannot live. The second cave may hold our emotions, turbulent and flowing, the waters of desire and fear, intimacy and rejection. The third cave may be the seed of our will, the fire that can burn destructively or illumine our path. The fourth cave is the heart, where the self learns to open beyond itself, to breathe compassion. The fifth cave is the voice, where truth seeks expression. The sixth cave is the mind's eye, where vision expands beyond appearances. The seventh cave is the crown, where the soul tastes union with what transcends it. These 7 caves are not separate. They are chambers of one great cavern, dimensions of a single being. To enter them is not to abandon the world, but to integrate it, to discover that what lies within is not opposed to the cosmos, but is its reflection. Jung would call this process individuation, the gradual integration of the unconscious with the conscious, the reconciliation of opposites, the discovery of the self that is more than ego. The myth tells us that from Chichén Itzá, the tribes emerged into the world. Likewise, from our inner caves, the integrated self emerges, capable of living more fully. But the journey is not simple. Descent requires courage, for the caves are dark and echoing. They confront us with shadows we would rather ignore, traumas, fears, desires we deny. Jung spoke of the shadow, the part of ourselves we repress, but which grows stronger the more it is denied. To enter the caves is to meet the shadow, to acknowledge it, to integrate it. Only then can the emergence be whole. We find echoes of this journey across the world. In the initiation rites of shamans, caves are places of vision and transformation. In the Platonic allegory, the cave is where prisoners mistake shadows for reality, until one turns, ascends, and discovers the sun. In Christian mysticism, the cave is the stable of Bethlehem, where divine light enters the world through the humility of earth. The symbol repeats. The cave is not only darkness, but the womb of new birth. And so, Chichén Itzá can be read as a call to practice. How do we enter our 7 caves today? Perhaps through silence, through meditation, through the honest gaze into our own depths. We can ask ourselves, what lies in my first cave? My body, my survival instincts. Am I at peace with them or at war? What lies in my second cave? My emotions. Do I allow them to flow or do I dam them until they flood? What lies in my third cave? My will. Do I wield power wisely or do I burn myself and others? What of the heart, the voice, the vision, the crown? Each cave awaits discovery. To walk this path is not to abandon the world, but to prepare for it. The tribes emerge from the cave, not to remain underground, but to establish new lives above. Likewise, we descend not to hide, but to return transformed. The integrated self is not detached, but engaged, bringing compassion, truth, and vision into the daylight of ordinary existence. In Kabbalah, the Sphirot remind us that each quality, kindness, strength, beauty, endurance, humility, foundation, sovereignty, must be balanced, harmonized. Too much of one distorts the whole. The same is true of the caves within us. If we dwell only in the will, we become tyrants. If only in the heart, we may drown in sentiment. If only in the mind's eye, we may lose contact with earth. Integration requires balance, and balance is the art of living. The myth of Chichén Itzá thus becomes a guide for inner work. It tells us that our origins are not merely biological, but symbolic, that we are born not only from mothers, but from the womb of the cosmos itself. To remember, this is to remember that our journey is both personal and universal. The caves are in us, but they also belong to humanity as a whole. Our personal descent is part of a collective emergence, and this is perhaps the deepest truth of the myth. We are never alone in the caves. The tribes emerge together. We, too, need companions in our descent, mentors, friends, communities that help us face the darkness and celebrate the light. Individuation is not isolation, but communion. To walk the path of the caves is to rediscover our place in the greater tribe of humanity. The Maya and the Aztec carried these myths not as curiosities, but as compass points. They knew that to forget origins is to lose direction. The 7 caves remind us that our origins are sacred, that within us lie the chambers of rebirth, that to be human is to be called to descent and emergence. If we dare to enter, we may discover that the darkness is not an enemy, but a teacher, and that the light we seek outside has always been waiting within. Thus, Chichén Itzá is not only a place in legend, but a practice in life. It invites us to map our inner caves, to face them, to integrate them, and to emerge more whole. It reminds us that the path of the soul is not linear, but spiraling, returning again and again to the depths in order to rise higher into the light. It teaches us that ancestry is not only behind us, but within us, that the tribes we belong to are not only historical, but archetypal. And it tells us that every human being carries 7 caves, 7 thresholds, 7 opportunities for transformation. To honor Chichén Itzá is to honor ourselves. To descend into the caves is to embrace the fullness of being. To emerge is to live as if every step were the first upon new ground, every breath the beginning of the world. For time, as the Mayan knew, is cyclical, and the soul, as the mystics knew, is eternal. The 7 caves are the bridge between them, the chambers where eternity and time meet, where the human remembers its origin and prepares its destiny. Chapter 5, Teotihuacán, Avenue of the Dead. There is a place in the Valley of Mexico where silence speaks louder than words. The stones of Teotihuacán, weathered by centuries, still breathe a presence that no ruin should be able to sustain. Here, pyramids rise like frozen flames. Avenues stretch like arteries of an ancient heart. And along one great thoroughfare, the Avenue of the Dead, the story of humanity is told not in words, but in stone. To walk this path is to feel both the weight of mortality and the whisper of something beyond it. Teotihuacán was once the largest city of the Western Hemisphere, long before Rome had reached its zenith, long before cathedrals punctured European skies. Its avenues were planned with mathematical precision, its pyramids aligned with celestial bodies, its murals drenched with symbols of gods and stars. So immense was its influence that later peoples, including the Aztec, would revere it as the very birthplace of the gods. To stand here is to stand at a crossroads of worlds, human and divine, temporal and eternal, life and death. The Avenue of the Dead carries a name given by the Aztecs, who saw in the facades of temples the likeness of tombs. Whether they were truly tombs is uncertain, but the symbolism is undeniable. To walk the avenue is to walk through death, to be reminded that human greatness, no matter how magnificent, is framed by mortality. It is also to be reminded that death is not the end. For at the northern end rises the pyramid of the moon, and beyond it the mountains, suggesting ascent, transcendence, the promise of renewal. In psychological terms, this avenue becomes a metaphor for the journey of individuation described by Jung. Individuation is not a comfortable stroll. It is a passage through shadows, a confrontation with death in its many forms: death of illusions, death of ego, death of the false self. Only through such symbolic deaths can the deeper self emerge, the wholeness that integrates conscious and unconscious, light and shadow. To walk the avenue of the dead is to recognize that transformation requires letting go, that every step toward authenticity is also a step away from what we once clung to. Ancient rituals often dramatized this truth. Initiates would be led into symbolic graves, wrapped in cloth, denied the comforts of light, until they experienced the terror of dissolution. Then, at the moment of climax, they would be lifted into the light, unwrapped, reborn. Death and rebirth were not metaphors to them, but experiences enacted in body and soul. At Teotihuacán, the very architecture may have served such a function, guiding pilgrims along a path where every step echoed the drama of mortality and transcendence. The Urantia book adds yet another layer to this vision. It describes human life not as a closed circle, but as a stage in a vast ascent. Death, according to Urantia, is not annihilation, but transition, a sleep before awakening on the mansion worlds, where the soul continues its education and growth. The avenue of the dead, then, is not only about the end of earthly existence, but about passage into greater life. It is the corridor that leads beyond the city of time into the city of eternity. To contemplate, it is to feel both the humility of mortality and the grandeur of destiny. Consider the juxtaposition: pyramids that seem eternal, and yet the people who built them vanished. Mortality framed by grandeur, transience wrapped in stone. Here we are reminded that even the greatest civilizations die. Yet their death gives birth to memory, to myth, to meaning. Likewise in our lives, careers end, relationships dissolve, identities shift, and yet from their ashes something new arises. The city itself becomes a mirror of our inner processes. Its rise our ambitions, its decline our losses, its avenue our passage from what is temporary to what endures. The avenue of the dead is also an invitation to reflection on collective mortality. Societies, like individuals, pass through cycles of birth, maturity, decay, and death. Jung wrote of the collective, unconscious shaping not only persons but cultures. When a culture resists its shadows, refuses to integrate its contradictions, it risks collapse. Teotihuacán may remind us that civilizations too must individuate, must confront their collective shadow, or they perish. Its ruins stand as a warning and a hope. Death is real, but from death comes possibility. For the seeker, then, the lesson is clear. To live is to die many times before the body's final dissolution. Every deep transformation requires surrender. Every new stage of growth requires letting go of the old. The spiritual traditions have known this. Baptism as death and rebirth, initiation as burial and emergence, meditation as dying to distractions and awakening to awareness. To resist death, symbolic or literal, is to resist life. To embrace, it is to discover that death itself is a servant of growth. Walking the avenue of the dead can thus become a practice. Each step can be a meditation on what must be released. With every pace, one can whisper inwardly, "This must die, so that I may live. Fear, resentment, illusions, let them be tunes we pass by, facades we leave behind. At the end of the avenue rises not only the pyramid of the moon, but the horizon of possibility. To reach it is to glimpse that beyond death, whether of ego or of body, there is always light. This is not a romanticizing of mortality. Death hurts. To lose a loved one is to feel torn open, to stand naked before the void. To face our own end is to tremble. Yet the wisdom of Teotihuacán is that this pain is not meaningless. As Frankl would remind us, suffering can be endured if it has meaning, if it serves a purpose. The purpose of symbolic death is transformation. The purpose of literal death, as Urantia assures, is transition. In both, we are led not into nothingness, but into becoming. Perhaps this is why the Aztec revered Teotihuacán as the place where gods were born. They sensed that here, amid ruins of power, life and death intertwined. From the death of one age, a new order emerged. From the death of human certainty, divine possibility was born. In our own lives, the pattern is the same. From our collapses, new selves are born. From our grief, compassion deepens. From our mortality, eternity opens. The avenue of the dead is long, but it is not endless. It ends in ascent, in the upward thrust of pyramid and mountain. To walk it is to accept death, but also to anticipate rebirth. It is to practice letting go, so that when the final letting go comes, we may walk it not in terror, but in trust. The ancients carved this lesson in stone so that we would not forget. Death is the passage, not the end. And so, Teotihuacán remains not only a ruin, but a teacher. Its stones whisper of mortality and transcendence, of endings and beginnings. Its avenue calls us to walk consciously, to embrace the deaths that shape us, to anticipate the rebirths that await us. If we listen, we may discover that the avenue of the dead is also the avenue of the living, the path by which we become more human, more whole, more eternal. Chapter 6, The Golden Orbs. Beneath the towering pyramids of Teotihuacán, archaeologists have found chambers that defy explanation. In 2003, a hidden tunnel was discovered under the temple of the Feathered Serpent, extending some 250 feet into the earth. The air was heavy, the walls lined with traces of pyrite and mica that shimmered when torches were lit. And in one chamber, hundreds of orbs were found, clay on the inside, but covered with golden flecks, so that in the darkness they glowed like planets suspended in a cosmic night. No codex explains their purpose. No inscription tells us what ritual unfolded in their presence. Yet the image is powerful. A subterranean sky, an underworld constellation, a reflection of the heavens beneath the earth. The ancients may have gathered there in ceremonies, and when torches flickered against the walls, the golden spheres would have seemed to float, stars in a hidden cosmos, planets of an invisible universe. To see them only as archaeological artifacts is to miss their invitation. The orbs whisper of an inner sky, a cosmos within. They suggest that beneath the pyramid of public life lies a cavern of secret light, where the soul can discover its own planetary system. Just as the Maya and Teotihuacanos charted the heavens above, so too they may have charted the heavens within, using symbol and ritual to mirror the macrocosm in the microcosm. Here the language of alchemy becomes illuminating. Paracelsus, the Renaissance physician and mystic, spoke of gold not only as a metal, but as a symbol of the perfected spirit. True gold, he said, is not mined but refined within. It is the incorruptible essence discovered through transformation, the luminous core hidden within the dross of matter. To gaze upon the golden orbs of Teotihuacán, then, is to be reminded of this inner alchemy. They are not merely clay and pyrite. They are symbols of the spirit's capacity to become radiant, to transform the ordinary into the eternal. Psychology, too, sees in the image of orbs an archetype of completeness. Jung noted that circles, spheres, and mandalas recur in dreams and art across cultures as symbols of the self, the totality of being that transcends the ego. The golden orb is the archetype of wholeness, the inner sun around which the psyche's planets orbit. To find such orbs in the earth beneath a pyramid is to find in stone what the psyche dreams in symbol. The reminder that within us lies a cosmos of order, a center of light around which our chaotic thoughts and emotions can revolve. The arrangement of the orbs, scattered yet gleaming, recalls the sky itself. Each human being carries such a sky within. Our thoughts are stars, our desires are comets, our fears are eclipses, our hopes are constellations. But at the center is the golden sun, the self, the divine presence, the adjuster of Urantia, around which all can find harmony. Without that center, we drift. With it, our inner cosmos becomes ordered, radiant, alive. What then is the practice suggested by these orbs? Perhaps it is the practice of inner astronomy. To enter our depths as one enters a cave, and to look not only at darkness, but at the lights that shine there. To name the planets of our psyche, the orbit of memory, the orbit of desire, the orbit of fear, the orbit of creativity. To see how they revolve, how sometimes they collide, how sometimes they eclipse the sun, and then to recall that beyond them all shines the golden core, steady, incorruptible, waiting for our attention. Paracelsus wrote that the microcosm is reflected in the macrocosm. That man is a small world within the great world. The orbs of Teotihuacán become a visual catechism of this truth. What is above is also below. What is cosmic is also intimate. The planets are not only in the sky, they are in our souls. Their movements are not only astronomical, but psychological. Astrology, at its deepest, was never about fortune-telling, but about recognizing this correspondence, seeing in the stars a mirror of the inner drama. The golden orbs also evoke ritual. Imagine torches blazing in the chamber, the walls glittering with flecks of pyrite, the spheres glowing like suns. The priests may have enacted ceremonies of death and rebirth, guiding initiates into the underworld not of geology, but of psyche. Surrounded by floating lights, the initiate might feel himself in a cosmic womb, awaiting rebirth into a higher awareness. The ceremony would impress upon him that within the darkness of the unconscious lies light, that even in descent one can discover stars. Such rituals echo the universal theme of descent and ascent. Just as the hero must ascend into the underworld to find the boon, so the soul must enter its own caves to discover the golden orbs. They are symbols of potential, of the treasures that lie buried in the unconscious. Jung often described the individuation process as finding the lapis, the philosopher's stone, hidden in the darkness of the psyche. The golden orbs may be such stones, not of mineral, but of meaning, not physical, but archetypal. And yet, the mystery is not only psychological. There's a spiritual radiance here that refuses to be reduced to symbol. Gold, across traditions, is the color of divinity, the hue of the eternal. In Christian icons, halos shine with gold leaf to signify uncreated light. In Buddhist stupas, gold domes gleam to evoke enlightenment. In alchemy, gold is the final stage, the perfection of matter and spirit. The orbs of Teotihuacán resonate with this universal symbolism. They're tokens of the eternal light that waits in every heart. One might even say that each human being carries within them 7 golden orbs, echoing the 7 caves, the 7 chakras, the 7 lamps of consciousness. Each orb must be polished, each brought into orbit, until the inner sky is radiant. The practice of life becomes the practice of polishing these orbs through meditation, compassion, truth, courage, creativity, humility, love. Every act of awareness is a stroke of cloth upon clay flecked with gold. Slowly, the orbs shine. Slowly, the cave becomes a sky. The Urantia book reminds us that knowledge is the true currency of the universe, the gift of the gods. Perhaps the golden orbs symbolize such knowledge, glowing treasures offered to the seekers who dared enter the depths. Not knowledge as accumulation of facts, but knowledge as transformation, as the light that turns ignorance into wisdom, confusion into clarity, despair into hope. To hold a golden orb in one's hand, even in imagination, is to hold the possibility of becoming more than one, of aligning one's orbit with the eternal sun. The city above was vast, filled with marketplaces, homes, and temples. The chambers below were secret, hidden, intimate. This duality mirrors our own lives. Above, we build careers, families, reputations. Below, in the cave of the heart, lie our golden orbs. Too often we forget them, consumed by the noise of the marketplace. But the ancients remind us, descend, look inward, discover the radiance that no ruin can erase. For when the city falls, when the pyramid crumbles, when the avenue is silent, the orbs remain. Thus, the golden orbs of Teotihuacán are not relics of a dead past, but guides for a living present. They teach us that within darkness there is light, within clay there is gold, within the microcosm there is cosmos. They remind us that the path of transformation is not linear but orbital, that our psyche is not chaos but cosmos waiting to be harmonized. They invite us to descend into our own caves, to discover our own golden orbs, to polish them until they shine. And in that shining, we find our place in the greater order. For just as the orbs reflect the stars, so our souls reflect the source. The alchemy of life is to realize this reflection, to live in such a way that the inner cosmos resonates with the outer, that the golden orbs of the heart mirror the galaxies above. When we achieve this harmony, we are no longer scattered fragments, but radiant wholes, no longer lost travelers, but luminous beings, planets orbiting the eternal sun. Chapter 7. The Voice of the Glyphs. The stones of Maya are not silent. They carry words, though not in the phonetic alphabet familiar to our eyes. They sing in glyphs, elaborate, intricate images carved into monuments, painted on codices, inscribed on stairways. To those who cannot read them, they appear as art, decorative and mysterious. But to those who understand, they are living voices, bridges between worlds, portals through which the sacred speaks in a time. For centuries, these voices lay mute. After the conquest, much of the Maya writing was destroyed, their codices burned in the flames of intolerance. Only 4 remain, fragile survivors of a vast library. For generations, the glyphs remained undeciphered, their language locked, their meaning hidden. Scholars stared at them as if staring at a foreign cosmos, unable to discern its order. Yet in the late 19th century, Ernst Forstmann, a German librarian with an extraordinary mathematical mind, cracked part of the code. He discovered that the Dresden Codex was not mere ornament, but an astronomical almanac, tracking Venus, eclipses, and cycles of time with astonishing accuracy. This revelation shifted everything. The glyphs were not primitive drawings, but precise expressions of a profound intelligence. They carried within them both myth and mathematics, both poetry and science. They were, in essence, the logos of a civilization, the word that bridges heaven and earth, myth and number, divine and human. Language, at its root, is never only functional. It is a vessel of revelation. Simone Weil wrote that attention is the purest form of prayer. To give attention to a word, to hold it in silence, to let it speak. This is already a spiritual act. The Maya glyphs demand such attention. Each stroke is deliberate, each curve infused with layers of meaning. They are not just signs to decode, but presences to encounter. To read a glyph is not merely to translate. It is to listen, to be addressed. Consider, for example, the glyph for Balaam, the jaguar. It is not only a picture of an animal. It carries the power of night, the strength of the hunter, the guardian of temples. In dreams, the jaguar prowls as an archetype of courage and mystery. In glyphs, the jaguar becomes a word that is more than word, an icon of the sacred qualities it embodies. Reading it is not just a mental act. It is a ritual encounter. In this sense, the Maya language embodies a truth that many spiritual traditions affirm, that words are not arbitrary, but sacramental. They do not merely point to reality. They participate in it. In the prologue of John's Gospel, we read, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." The Logos is not a label for the divine. It is the divine expressing itself. The Maya glyphs, in their own way, echo this mystery. They are not decorations of thought, but incarnations of meaning, each a little incarnation of cosmos and form. What happens to us when we approach language in this way? Our habits of reading are transformed. We no longer skim or consume. We attend. We pray with our eyes. Simone Weil's insight becomes real. Attention itself becomes a doorway to the sacred. When we linger on a glyph, when we let its shapes sink into us, we're not simply learning information, but entering into communion. The glyph becomes a mirror of our own inner cosmos, awakening archetypes, stirring depths of soul we have forgotten. The Codex de Dresden, with its sequences of glyphs detailing cycles of Venus, is a perfect example. To a superficial gaze, it is a calendar. To a deeper gaze, it is a liturgy of time. Each glyph, each number, is a way of speaking eternity into the rhythm of days. Forstmann saw mathematics, but beyond mathematics lies myth. Venus is not only a planet. It is the morning star, the evening star, the symbol of renewal and beauty, of death and rebirth. The glyphs inscribing its cycle are not data, but sacred reminders. That beauty disappears and returns, that light is hidden and revealed, that life moves in patterns more profound than we can measure. And here we touch upon psychology. Jung recognized that language, especially symbolic language, carries the energy of archetypes. The glyph is not just an external mark. It resonates with internal images. When we encounter a glyph of the serpent, we are stirred by ancient associations: danger, wisdom, renewal. When we see the glyph of the maize god, we feel the archetype of nourishment, death, and resurrection. These are not intellectual associations, but visceral experiences. The glyph awakens what already sleeps within us. The Maya, then, were not only writing history, they were writing the psyche. Their glyphs mapped the interior world as surely as they mapped the heavens. To read them is to participate in a dialogue between the visible and the invisible, between the human and the divine. Language becomes revelation. Glyphs become the voice of gods. And what of us, modern readers? Surrounded by alphabets that reduce words to sequences of abstract letters, we often forget this sacramental dimension of language. We treat words as tools, as commodities, as noise. But the Maya remind us, language can be holy. Every word can be a glyph if we attend to it, if we listen as though it carries the voice of eternity. Simone would call us back to such listening, to pay attention to a single phrase, to dwell with it until it reveals its secret, is to open ourselves to grace. The Urantia book speaks of the adjuster of thought, the divine fragment within us that translates the infinite into the language of our mind. The glyphs can be seen as external mirrors of this same process. Just as the adjuster inscribes eternity in the patterns of our thoughts, so the glyphs inscribe eternity in the patterns of stone and ink. Both remind us that language is not only ours but shared, not only mental but divine. Thus, the voice of the glyphs is not silenced by conquest or time. It speaks still to those who will attend. It tells us that language is more than utility, that words can be bridges, that letters can be ladders, that symbols can be sacraments. It calls us to recover reverence for language, to read not only with eyes but with soul. Imagine yourself standing before a carved stela, its surface etched with glyphs. At first, you see only patterns, but as you gaze, slowly, you feel a presence. The glyphs seem to gaze back. You sense that each line is intentional, that each curve is an invocation. You are not only deciphering, you are being deciphered. The glyph speaks you as much as you speak it. In that moment, you are reminded that language is not something we control, but something that flows through us, something that links us to the depths of being. This is the voice of the glyphs. It is the voice that says, pay attention. Do not skim the surface of reality. Listen to the shapes, the patterns, the rhythms. Every mark of existence is a word. Every event is a glyph. Every breath is a syllable of the divine logos. To live with such awareness is to inhabit a world alive with meaning, where nothing is mute, where everything speaks. And so, the Maya glyphs become more than archaeology. They become spiritual teachers. They remind us that writing can be revelation, that symbols can open doors, that language can unite us with the eternal. They invite us to approach our own words with reverence, to recover the art of attention, to listen for the divine voice in every syllable of existence. For in the end, the glyphs are not foreign, they are kin. They speak the same archetypal language that dreams speak, that myths speak, that our souls understand even when our minds falter. They are one more manifestation of the eternal logos, the word that was in the beginning, the word that is still being spoken. To hear them is to remember that we, too, are words of the divine, glyphs inscribed in flesh, sentences of spirit. Chapter 8, The Departing Gods. Throughout myth and history, one theme recurs with striking persistence. The gods arrive, bestow wisdom or power, and then they depart. They descend in radiance, awaken civilizations, kindle fires of meaning, and then vanish, leaving behind silence, longing, and memory. In Mesoamerica, Kukulcán and Quetzalcoatl were said to have walked among the people, teaching agriculture, astronomy, and the arts before withdrawing with a promise to return. The Aztec awaited his reappearance across the seas. In the Bible, the divine walked in the garden, spoke from burning bushes, parted seas, and then, often, withdrew, leaving prophets to wrestle with absence. In Greek mythology, the gods of Olympus mingled with mortals, only to retreat to their celestial heights when the age shifted. The departure of the gods is not a mythological curiosity. It is a spiritual reality. Every soul, at some point, knows the sweetness of presence and the ache of absence. There are moments when the divine feels near, when prayers ignite like fire and visions seem to open, And there are moments when the heavens feel shut, when silence replaces speech, when the sacred seems to vanish behind a veil. Mystics have long understood this. John of the Cross, the Carmelite poet of Spain, called it the dark night of the soul. In this night, God withdraws not to punish, but to deepen. The absence is itself a presence of another kind, a purifying fire that burns away illusions, attachments, and the reliance on consolations. In silence, the soul is stretched. In absence, desire grows stronger. The dark night, though bitter, becomes the womb of union, the preparation for a love that is no longer based on feelings but on being. Jung, with psychological clarity, describes similar experiences as part of individuation. He saw the psyche often passing through periods of emptiness, when symbols lose their meaning, when the gods of the unconscious seem dead or absent. This, too, is necessary. The old gods must die for new gods to be born. The ego must feel abandoned to discover that the self, deeper, eternal, is still present. The death of God, which Nietzsche proclaimed, can be read not as nihilism but as transition. The departure of old images so that deeper realities may emerge. In the Urantia book, the withdrawal of divine presence also has pedagogical meaning. The adjuster of thought is always with us, yet rarely manifests directly. The book insists that overt miracles are exceptions, for the purpose of life is to grow in faith, to learn trust in the absence of proof. The epics when divine sons walked visibly among men are remembered as luminous, yet their withdrawal is equally significant. Humanity must mature, must practice responsibility, must choose truth without the compulsion of overwhelming presence. The absence of the gods is the training ground of freedom. We see this dynamic in myth after myth. Prometheus brings fire, but does not remain. Christ ascends, leaving his disciples with his spirit rather than his body. Kukulcán vanishes, leaving architecture that remembers his descent, but not his continual presence. The gods withdraw, and in that absence the human story unfolds. Why must this be? Perhaps because continual presence would paralyze. If the divine were constantly visible, constantly overwhelming, choice would collapse, freedom would dissolve into obedience, and love would lose its meaning. Absence creates space. Silence invites response. Withdrawal makes room for responsibility. The gods depart so that we may become gods in potential, so that we may awaken to our own capacity for divinity. This does not diminish the pain of absence. Anyone who has prayed into silence, who has searched for signs and found only void, knows the ache. John of the Cross describes it with searing honesty. The soul feels abandoned, forgotten, cast into night. Jung observed that modern people often feel this as meaninglessness, as the collapse of symbols that once oriented their world. The temples crumble, the rituals seem hollow, the gods are gone. Yet it is precisely here that transformation begins. For absence is not nothingness, it is invitation. When the gods withdraw, they do not erase themselves. They call us to discover them in deeper ways. The Maya carved their gods into stone so that even in absence, presence would echo. The Christian mystics turned inward, discovering in silence the voice that cannot be silenced. Jung urged his patients to listen to dreams, where archetypes continued to whisper even when conscious faith faltered. Urantia insists that even in silence, the adjuster is working, shaping, guiding, preparing. The departure of the gods is thus a stage in the journey, not its end. It is a passage through shadow into light, through night into dawn. Just as the serpent of Kukulcán descends and then vanishes into the pyramid, promising return, so divine presence descends and withdraws, not to abandon, but to prepare us for greater recognition. The rhythm of presence and absence is itself the heartbeat of spiritual growth. Consider the rhythms of human love. Lovers cannot always remain in ecstasy. There are moments of nearness and moments of distance, moments of rapture and moments of quiet separation. The distance does not negate the love, it matures it. So it is with the divine. If we lived always in ecstasy, we would never grow. If we never experienced absence, we would never learn faith. The gods depart so that love can deepen. Practically, this means that when we feel the silence of God, we are not abandoned. We're being taught a new mode of seeing. The consolations fade so that we might discover the deeper presence that does not depend on feeling. Jung would say that this is the movement from ego to self, from dependence on outer forms to discovery of inner wholeness. John of the Cross would say, is the stripping away of attachments so that union may be pure. Urantia would say it is the growth of faith, the preparation for eternity. In this light, the avenue of the dead at Teotihuacán becomes more than a reminder of mortality. It becomes an emblem of divine withdrawal. The gods depart, leaving temples behind. Yet the temples speak, the silence resonates. Absence itself becomes a voice. The question is whether we will despair or attend, whether we will see emptiness as abandonment or as invitation. The Maya and the Aztec waited for the return of Quetzalcoatl. Christians await the return of Christ. Mystics await the dawn after night. Each myth, each faith encodes the same pattern: presence, absence, promise. The gods who depart are also the gods who return, though not always in the way we expect. Sometimes they return as memory, sometimes as vision, sometimes as the quiet strength that grows in us during the silence. What, then, is the lesson of the departing gods? It is that faith matures in silence, that meaning deepens in absence, that freedom blossoms when presence withdraws. It is that death is not the end, silence is not void, absence is not abandonment. It is that the divine trusts us enough to step back, to let us walk, to let us stumble, to let us grow. And so, the myth of the gods who leave is not tragedy, but pedagogy. It teaches us to trust what we cannot see, to love what we cannot always feel, to grow toward a presence that is deeper than appearances. The gods who depart call us to discover the God within, the eternal presence that does not vanish. The silence that terrifies us is also the silence in which the Logos speaks. In the end, the departure of the gods is not their disappearance, but our initiation. They depart so that we may arrive. They withdraw so that we may step forward. They vanish so that we may seek and, in seeking, find. Their absence is the space in which our freedom unfolds, our love matures, our souls grow toward eternity. Chapter 9. Between Stars and Adjusters. Humanity has always lifted its gaze to the heavens in longing. The night sky, embroidered with constellations, has been read as a text of gods and destinies. From Chichén Itzá to Stonehenge, from Babylon to the pyramids of Giza, we have traced in the stars stories of descent and return. The gods, we imagined, dwell above and visit below, crossing the gulf to deliver fire, wisdom, law. The descent of Kukulcán, the visions of Ezekiel, the fiery chariots of India, all tell the same tale. The divine visits us from beyond. Yet the Urantia book offers a startling reversal. It speaks of gods who do not only descend in radiant forms, but who implant within each human being a fragment of their own essence. These are the thought adjusters, mysterious presences, pre-personal sparks of the divine dwelling within our minds. They are not visitors from outside, but intimates from within. They do not descend from the sky. They whisper from the silence of our inner chambers. If the myths of God speak of a descent from stars, the doctrine of adjusters speaks of a descent into souls. This changes everything. For if divinity is not only above, but within, then the true meeting place of heaven and earth is not only in temples of stone, but in the consciousness of every human being. The adjuster is a star within, a burning presence that guides, teaches, corrects, and longs to unify with us. It is the God who never departs, the visitor who arrives at birth and remains until the last breath, shaping us toward eternity. Teilhard de Chardin, the Jesuit paleontologist and mystic, glimpsed something similar in his vision of the Omega Point. He saw evolution not only as biological, but as spiritual, moving toward a point of convergence, a final union of consciousness with God. Within us burns this directionality, this pull toward Omega. The adjuster is the inner compass pointing to that end, the fragment of divinity that ensures that the cosmos is not random, but purposeful. Just as Teilhard saw the cosmos bending toward unification, so the Urantia book sees every soul bending toward fusion with its adjuster, a personal Omega in the universal Omega. This inner star is easy to forget. We are enchanted by the outer spectacle, the myths of fiery gods, the rumors of extraterrestrials, the hope of rescue from the skies. It is simpler to imagine salvation descending from without than to face the work of inner transformation. Yet the adjuster calls us inward. It invites us to shift our gaze from the heavens above to the heavens within. The truest contact with divinity is not in awaiting a spaceship or a miracle, but in attending to the whisper of conscience, the spark of intuition, the subtle nudge toward truth, beauty, and goodness. Jung, though he did not know of the adjuster, described the self as the archetype of wholeness, the inner center that transcends the ego and links us with the divine. In dreams, it appears as wise old men, radiant figures, circles of light. It is the God image within. The adjuster is more than an archetype. It is, according to Urantia, an actual fragment of the infinite, but the resonance is clear. The archetypes prepare us for the reality. The gods that descend in myths are projections of this inner fact, that the divine does not leave us alone, but inhabits us. Teilhard insisted that the future of humanity depended on recognizing this interiority. The next stage of evolution, he argued, was not only technological but spiritual, a collective awakening to our inner divine center. Without this, progress would be hollow. With it, progress would converge into communion. The adjuster is the guarantee of this possibility. It is the inner presence that bends our chaos toward cosmos, our fragmentation toward unity, our wandering toward purpose. To live with awareness of the adjuster is to live as if guided by an inner star. The ancients aligned pyramids with Venus or the Pleiades, but we are invited to align our choices with the fragment of God within. Every decision becomes an orbit, every act a revolution around this hidden sun. When we resist, our lives scatter into chaos. When we yield, we fall into harmony, into the great dance of becoming. This does not mean rejecting the myths of descent. They are precious, for they prepared humanity to believe that gods could touch mortals, that heaven could visit earth. But now, perhaps, we are invited to mature, to see that the gods who descended were always pointing us inward, toward the God who never leaves. The myths of descent are shadows of the greater truth, that divinity has been with us all along, not only as visitors, but as indwellers. The experience of interiority is subtle, often drowned out by noise. It requires attention, the kind Simone, while described as prayer, to sit in silence, to listen inwardly, to attend to the still, small voice. This is the practice of contacting the adjuster. There is no spectacle, no fireworks, no pyramid of light. There is only a deepening sense of guidance, a quiet conviction of what is true, a gentle pull toward goodness that persists even when ignored. To live by this voice is to live by the true logos, the word that speaks not in thunder, but in silence. And yet, paradoxically, this silence is the greatest contact. For while myths of descent tell of gods who came and went, the adjuster does not depart. It is faithful. It remains even in our forgetfulness, even in our rebellion. It waits with patience, shaping us, longing to fuse with us in eternity. The gods who depart leave temples. The adjuster who remains builds a temple of consciousness within us. Teilhard's Omega reminds us that this fusion is not only personal, but cosmic. Each adjuster seeks union, and when countless souls unite with their fragments, the cosmos itself is drawn toward greater communion. Evolution is not only the survival of species, but the convergence of spirits. The stars above remind us of vastness. The adjuster within reminds us of intimacy. Between them, we live, guided by heavens both external and internal, called by constellations above and constellations within. Perhaps this is the reconciliation we seek, to honor the myths of descent without clinging to them, to embrace the adjuster's presence without neglecting the awe of the cosmos. For both point to the same truth, that we are not alone, that the divine longs to meet us, that heaven and earth are bridged. The only difference is the direction of our gaze. Outward, we see gods and the stars. Inward, we see the God within. Together, they remind us that the universe is alive with presence, both transcendent and immanent. To live between stars and adjusters is to live in a double awe. Each night sky becomes a mirror of inner grandeur. Each inner whisper becomes an echo of cosmic truth. Teilhard would say that the Omega already shines in every spark of consciousness. Urantia would say that the adjuster already works in every human mind. Jung would say that the self already dreams in every symbol. Together they tell us, you are accompanied within and without. And so we walk not abandoned, but luminous. The gods descend in myth, but the adjuster descends in reality. The stars burn in space, but the star of divinity burns in us. Teilhard points us to the horizon. Jung points us to the depths. Urantia points us to eternity. The bridge is built. The choice is ours to cross it. Chapter 10, The Womb of the Galaxy. There's a place in the heavens where the Milky Way seems to break. Between the constellations of Sagittarius and Scorpius stretches a dark rift, a vast cloud of interstellar dust obscuring the galactic center. To the naked eye, it appears as a gap, a cosmic wound in the river of stars. But to ancient peoples, the Maya among them, this was no wound but a womb. They called it the birth canal of the universe, the place from which all things emerge and to which all things return. Astronomy confirms that within this dark rift lies the center of our galaxy, a region dense with stars, nebulae, and a supermassive black hole. Science sees gravitational force, stellar nurseries, the mechanics of creation and collapse. Myth sees a womb, a portal, a place of origin. And perhaps both are true. For what is a black hole if not a womb of paradox, devouring matter only to transform it, obscuring light only to bend space into new forms? What is a galactic center if not the heart from which billions of stars are born? The Maya aligned their rituals with this cosmic womb. On December 21st, 2012, much was made of their long count calendar ending at the moment of a rare alignment. The Earth, the Sun, and the galactic center in a straight line. Sensationalists predicted apocalypse, but the Maya themselves spoke not of ending, but of renewal. For them, alignment with the galactic womb was not death but rebirth, not annihilation, but genesis. The dark rift was the cosmic uterus, and to enter, it was to be born again. Mircea Eliade, in his studies of cosmogony, showed how ancient peoples repeatedly returned to the moment of creation. Rituals of renewal reenacted the primordial beginning, abolishing profane time and re-entering sacred time. New Year festivals, agricultural rites, initiations, all were ways of stepping back into the womb of the cosmos, of beginning again. The dark rift of the Milky Way embodies this principle in the sky itself. Each time the sun aligns with it, we are reminded the universe has a womb, and we are still within it. Teilhard de Chardin would have seen in this not only a poetic image, but a trajectory of evolution. For him, the cosmos is not static, but moving toward greater complexity and consciousness. Birth is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process. Humanity itself is in gestation, evolving toward the omega point, the final union with the divine. The galactic womb becomes then a symbol of our evolutionary destiny. We are not finished beings, but embryos of eternity, still within the cosmic uterus, still forming, still awaiting full birth. Psychology, too, recognizes the power of rebirth imagery. Jung observed that dreams often contain motifs of descent into caves, immersion in water, or entry into dark chambers, all symbols of returning to the womb, of seeking renewal. The psyche, when overwhelmed or exhausted, longs to begin again, to shed the old self and be reborn. The dark rift of the galaxy mirrors this inner need. It is an image projected into the sky of what our souls constantly experience: death and rebirth, dissolution and regeneration, endings that are beginnings. To contemplate the galactic womb is to remember that birth is both cosmic and personal. Each of us was once carried in darkness, nourished unseen, formed in silence. The maternal womb is the first cosmos, the first temple, the first mystery. To see the Milky Way's dark rift as a universal womb is to extend this memory to the scale of galaxies. We are all carried, all nourished, all formed within the greater womb of creation. The universe itself is maternal, not only vast, but intimate, not only endless, but gestational. This shifts how we think of darkness. Too often we fear it, equating it with emptiness, with death, with absence. But the dark rift is not emptiness. It is fullness hidden. The womb is dark, but within it life stirs. The soil is dark, but within its seeds awaken. The night is dark, but within its stars shine. The darkness of the galactic rift is not negation, but potential, not absence, but incubation. To enter, it is not to vanish, but to be remade. Rituals of initiation often mimic this truth. The initiate is placed in darkness, cut off from familiar light, made to feel disoriented, even terrified. Only after this descent does the rebirth occur, the emergence into light, the recognition of new identity. The galactic womb is the cosmic stage of this initiation, reminding us that all transformation requires descent, all renewal requires darkness, all rebirth requires waiting within the hidden. Teilhard would remind us that evolution itself is this waiting. The cosmos is still pregnant, still groaning in labor, still forming consciousness. Humanity is not the final product, but the fetus. Our wars, our confusions, our breakthroughs are the contractions of labor, the spasms of a birth not yet complete. The omega point is the child to be born, the fullness of love and consciousness. The dark rift is the uterus in which we gestate, stars the amniotic fluid, galaxies the placenta. Eliade would add that each cosmogony is also personal. To return to the beginning is to renew oneself. Every prayer, every silence, every meditation can be a return to the womb. To step into inner darkness willingly, to let go of old forms, is to place oneself back into the hands of the Cosmic Mother. We become embryos of spirit, awaiting the next birth. This metaphor of the galactic womb also transforms how we view death. If life is gestation, then death is not annihilation, but birth into a larger reality. The Urantia book echoes this. Mortal death is a sleep, followed by awakening in the Mansion worlds, a passage from the womb of time into the life of eternity. The dark rift reminds us that what we fear as endings are often beginnings, that death itself may be a birth canal through which we emerge into greater consciousness. To live with this vision is to live with hope, for it means that our struggles are not wasted, our darkness not meaningless, our waiting not in vain. It means that the cosmos itself is maternal, carrying us even when we feel lost. It means that within the dark rift of our own lives, the nights of despair, the seasons of confusion, the tunnels of grief, something is gestating. We are being formed for birth we cannot yet imagine. Practically, this invites us into a spirituality of patience. Seeds do not rush to sprout. Embryos do not rush to be born. Galaxies do not rush to form. We too must wait, must trust the process of gestation, must surrender to the hidden work of the divine within us. The adjuster, according to Urantia, is shaping us quietly, like a fetus shaped unseen in the womb. Teilhard would say that evolution is guided by love, even when slow, even when painful. The dark rift reminds us to trust the hidden labor of the cosmos. And yet, waiting is not passive. The fetus grows, the seed unfolds, the galaxy swirls. In our waiting, we too must grow. We must nourish the soul, cultivate compassion, deepen awareness, prepare ourselves for the birth to come. Every act of kindness is a cell dividing. Every moment of truth, a new organ forming. Every practice of love, another step toward full life. Waiting is active gestation, not idle delay. So let us look again at the night sky. The Milky Way arches overhead, a river of stars. At its center, the dark rift yawns, vast and mysterious. It is not absence but womb, not nothingness but origin. It is the place where stars are born, where galaxies churn, where consciousness itself may find its root. To gaze upon, it is to gaze upon our own origin and destiny, to see in the heavens the mirror of our own becoming. The womb of the galaxy speaks. Do not fear darkness. Do not despair in waiting. Do not mistake endings for emptiness. You are still being born. The cosmos still labors. The divine still gestates. The dark rift is not a void but a promise. Within it, new light is forming. Within you, new life is awakening. The universe is not finished, and neither are you. Chapter 11, Dinosaurs and Collective Memories. In the dense jungles of Mesoamerica, archaeologists have uncovered murals and carvings that puzzle the modern mind. Among depictions of warriors, jaguars, serpents, and gods, there sometimes appear creatures that seem eerily familiar yet impossibly ancient. Beings with reptilian features resembling dinosaurs, pterosaurs, or other prehistoric forms. How could the Maya, living millennia after the extinction of such animals, inscribe their likenesses in stone? Is it evidence that some species survived? Or is it something more mysterious, a memory of the deep past that lingers in the collective psyche of humanity? For mainstream science, the idea that humans and dinosaurs coexisted is untenable. The extinction of the great reptiles is placed 65 million years before the rise of humanity. But Jung would remind us that not all images are literal. The psyche carries what he called archetypes, primordial patterns of experience and form that emerge again and again in myth, art, and dream. The dinosaur in Maya art may not be a fossil come to life, but an archetype remembered, a figure drawn from the depths of the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious, according to Jung, is not personal memory, but humanity's shared inheritance of images and instincts. It is the library of our species, storing not events but patterns, not facts but forms. When a child dreams of monsters, when a culture invents dragons, when ancient artists carve reptilian figures, they may be tapping into this reservoir. Dinosaurs, though absent in the flesh, may survive in symbol, their forms resurfacing in the imagination as embodiments of primal fear, power, and mystery. Why dinosaurs? Because they embody the grandeur and terror of deep time. They are creatures of scale, larger than human life, embodiments of forces beyond control. To dream of such beings is to confront the immensity of creation, the rawness of evolution, the violence and majesty of survival. They are archetypes of the titanic, the prehistoric, the ungovernable. To carve them into temple walls is to acknowledge the memory of chaos that still lurks beneath civilization's order. The Maya, like many cultures, carried myths of giant serpents, monstrous beings, primordial creatures. Quetzalcoatl himself, though a god of wisdom, was imagined as a feathered serpent, a fusion of bird and reptile, of sky and earth, of terror and transcendence. The dinosaur-like images may be extensions of this archetype, reminders of the primordial chaos out of which order was born, of the beast that must be faced to achieve transformation. Jung noted that archetypes often take on animal form in dreams, for animals embody instinct, drive, and the unconscious. Dinosaurs, then, are archetypes of the most primal instincts, the survival energies of the species. To face them in imagination is to descend into the oldest layers of the psyche, to encounter the memory not of the individual, but of life itself. Mircea Eliade suggested that myths return us to origins, to the time before time, when the cosmos was still forming. To remember dinosaurs in symbol is to remember that primal age, to taste again the beginnings of life. It is not about paleontology, but about cosmogony, the sense that beneath our fragile civilization still roars the memory of Earth's ferocious birth. This collective memory is not literal, but symbolic, yet its impact is real. When children today draw dragons or dinosaurs without ever having studied fossils, they are tapping into an image older than culture. When ancient artists carved reptilian figures, they were expressing the same archetype. Across ages and continents, humanity dreams the same beasts, for humanity shares the same unconscious. And perhaps imagination itself is the bridge. Through imagination, we access what has been forgotten. We recover eras beyond personal experience. The Maya artist, inspired by dream or vision, may have touched that deep reservoir and given form to what the psyche remembered. This is the gift of imagination. It does not create ex nihilo, but retrieves from the depths what once was, reshaping it into forms the conscious mind can grasp. The survival of dinosaur-like forms in myth and art thus testifies to the longevity of archetypes. They do not vanish when the species vanishes. They endure as symbols. The dragon of Europe, the Naga of India, the feathered serpent of Mesoamerica all echo the same form. Reptilian, powerful, ambivalent, both destructive and creative. They are memories not of species, but of archetypes, survivals not of bone, but of meaning. In this sense, the Maya depictions are not anomalies, but confirmations. They confirm that humanity carries within it the entire history of life, not as fact, but as form, not as fossil, but as image. To see a dinosaur in art is to glimpse the strata of the psyche, to realize that our unconscious remembers what our conscious mind cannot. And this has spiritual significance. For if we carry within us the memory of deep time, then our identity is larger than we imagine. We are not only individuals of a few decades, but heirs of billions of years. Our fears and dreams are shaped not only by childhood, but by the primal history of life. To integrate these archetypes is to embrace the fullness of being, to reconcile the ancient reptile within us with the emerging spirit. Jung would insist that to deny these images is to repress them, and what is repressed returns as neurosis. To integrate them is to befriend them, to recognize that even the dinosaur within us, the instinctual, the titanic, the primal, has a place in the psyche. It must not dominate, but neither must it be banished. It must be acknowledged as ancestor, as memory, as energy to be transformed. Thus, the enigma of dinosaurs in Maya art becomes a lesson in psychology. It tells us that we are creatures of memory deeper than we know. It tells us that imagination is not fantasy, but archaeology of the soul. It tells us that symbols carry more truth than facts, that art can reveal epics hidden in the marrow of our species. Teilhard de Chardin might add that these memories remind us of the vast evolutionary journey we are part of. From reptiles to mammals to humans, consciousness has climbed, carrying within itself the memory of each stage. To dream of dinosaurs is to touch our evolutionary past, to remember the long pilgrimage of life towards spirit. And to represent them in art is to acknowledge that pilgrimage, to situate ourselves in the continuum of creation. The Urantia book, with its grand cosmology, would affirm that nothing is lost in the universe, that every stage of life contributes to the greater whole. Dinosaurs may be extinct, but their meaning persists, their energy transformed, their archetypes alive. Humanity does not begin at its own birth. It carries within it the echoes of all that came before. The adjuster within us works with this entire inheritance, guiding not only individuals but species toward integration and destiny. So when we stand before a Maya mural and see what looks like a dinosaur, let us not rush to literal questions of coexistence. Let's ask instead, what memory is speaking here? What archetype is being carved? What layer of humanity's soul is surfacing in stone? The answer may not be paleontological, but psychological, not scientific, but symbolic. And yet, it may be no less true. For truth is not only fact, it is meaning. And the meaning of these creatures is clear. We are beings of memory, bearers of deep time, participants in a cosmic story that did not begin with us and will not end with us. Dinosaurs are symbols of our roots, reminders of the immensity of our journey, calls to integrate the ancient with the new. To ignore them is to forget who we are. To attend to them is to awaken to our depth. And perhaps this is the wisdom the Maya sought to preserve, that even in the age of temples and calendars, the primal beasts still live within us, and to know ourselves we must face them. In this light, the dinosaurs of Maya art are not anomalies but mirrors. They reflect our own collective memory, our own unconscious, our own need to integrate past and present. They remind us that imagination is not illusion but revelation, that archetypes endure when species vanish, that the soul carries epics within it. They invite us to listen to the deep roars that echo in our dreams, to honor the primal even as we seek the spiritual, to embrace the full breadth of being human. For we are not only children of history, we are children of prehistory, children of eternity. The dinosaurs may be gone, but their shadows walk in our myths. Their power lives in our fears. Their forms shine in our art. They are alive in us, as archetypes, as memories, as teachers. And if we listen, they remind us that life is vast, that memory is deep, that the soul is older than time. Chapter 12, Quetzalcoatl and the Cosmic Christ. Among the myths of Mesoamerica, few figures shine as brightly as Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, the god who descends from the heavens bearing wisdom, art, and civilization. He is the teacher who walks among men, who refuses human sacrifice, who blesses with agriculture, calendars, and knowledge, and who departs with the promise of return. His image is paradox, serpent and bird, earth and sky, instinct and spirit. He bridges worlds, embodying in his very form the reconciliation of opposites. The Maya called him Kukulcán, the Yucatec name for the feathered serpent. The Aztec revered him as the god who gave maize, who structured time, who ordered the cosmos. At Chichén Itzá, the play of light and shadow on the pyramid of Kukulcán still enacts his descent at the equinox, a serpent of light sliding down stone steps to meet its sculpted head. This is not mere architecture. It is liturgy in stone, a cosmic drama inscribed in sunlight. It proclaims, the divine descends, teaches, and departs, yet promises to return. For those familiar with Christian tradition, the resonance is striking. The Gospel of John speaks of the Logos, the Word made flesh, who descended from heaven, lived among us, and promised to return. Christ is not only teacher but cosmic presence, the one through whom all things were made, the living bridge between human and divine. The Urantia book deepens this vision, describing Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth, as a universe sovereign, incarnating in our world to reveal the Father and inaugurate a new age of sonship with God. Like Quetzalcoatl, he comes as teacher, healer, bearer of wisdom, and departs with the promise of return. The parallels invite contemplation. Was Quetzalcoatl a cultural anticipation of the Christ? Or do both figures arise from the same archetype, the universal image of the teacher who descends, blesses, and departs? Jung would argue that the archetype of the Savior, the wise master, the God-man, emerges in all cultures because it is written in the collective unconscious. Humanity longs for guidance, projects this longing onto the heavens, and dreams of gods who walk among us. Yet the archetype is not fantasy, it is preparation. It prepares the psyche to receive the real when it comes, to recognize in Jesus the fulfillment of what myth had foreshadowed. Rumi, the Sufi poet, understood this archetype in terms of the master within. He wrote of the friend, the beloved guide who is closer than breath, who teaches not from outside, but from within the heart. For Rumi, Christ and the prophets are not only historical figures, but mirrors of the eternal master who whispers in every soul. Quetzalcoatl, too, can be read this way. Not only is a mythic god of Mesoamerica, but is symbol of the master within, the voice of wisdom that descends in silence, teaches, and calls us upward. The feathered serpent embodies this paradox of transcendence and immanence. As serpent, he touches earth, instincts mortality. As bird, he soars to heaven, spirit, eternity. To join them in one figure is to proclaim that the divine does not despise matter, but embraces it, does not flee the world, but redeems it. The logos became flesh. The serpent sprouted feathers. Both images declare, heaven and earth are not enemies, but partners. The Urantia book insists that Jesus revealed not only the Father, but the unity of the cosmos, matter and spirit, human and divine, temporal and eternal. Quetzalcoatl's descent enacts the same truth in myth. He descends to remind us that wisdom is not remote, that the divine bends down to meet us, that the serpent of instinct can be lifted into the bird of spirit. His return is the promise that this union is not finished, that the cosmos itself awaits its consummation in the Omega. Teilhard de Chardin, though writing in another tradition, spoke of Christ as the Omega point, the center of convergence of all evolution. For him, Christ is not only historical but cosmic, the one toward whom all creation tends. Quetzalcoatl's myth of return can be read in the same light, as the anticipation of a cosmic fulfillment, a time when divine wisdom will not only visit but transform. Both point to the same horizon, the unification of heaven and earth in love. What does this mean for us? It means that the myths of different cultures are not contradictions, but harmonies. They are different languages speaking the same truth, that the divine seeks us, that wisdom descends, that love teaches, that presence departs but promises return. To honor Quetzalcoatl is not to diminish Christ. It is to see Christ already anticipated, already foreshadowed, already whispered in other tongues. The Logos is not bound by one culture. It is universal, speaking through pyramids and crosses, through feathers and gospels, through serpents and lambs. Rumi would urge us to seek the master within these symbols. The real Quetzalcoatl, the real Christ, is not only in history, but in the heart. The descent of the god is the awakening of conscience, the illumination of mind, the stirring of love. To wait for his return is not only to look to the skies, but to listen inwardly, to discover that he has already returned whenever we awaken to truth. This does not erase the historical. The Maya truly built pyramids. Jesus truly walked in Galilee. Rumi truly sang in Kenya. But history becomes sacrament when read in this way. It becomes more than fact. It becomes mirror of eternal truth. Quetzalcoatl's descent at equinox is not only an astronomical trick, but a cosmic reminder. Christ's incarnation is not only a theological claim, but the revelation of the eternal Logos. Both invite us to live as if heaven has already touched earth, as if we ourselves are feathers on the serpent, matter lifted into spirit. The challenge is to embody what we revere. It is one thing to gaze at the pyramid, another to become the stairway down which light descends. It is one thing to worship Christ, another to live his Logos in thought and act. Quetzalcoatl and Christ are not only to be admired, but imitated. The serpent must sprout feathers in us. The Logos must become flesh in us. This is the true return of the God, when humanity itself becomes divine in love, when we live as sons and daughters of the eternal. And so, the myths converge. Quetzalcoatl descends, teaches, departs, promises return. Christ descends, teaches, departs, promises return. Both are images of the same truth, that the cosmos is not abandoned, that wisdom walks among us, that the divine enters history. Both awaken in us the archetype of the teacher, the longing for the master, the readiness to listen. Both call us beyond literalism into transformation. Rumi says, "The master who teaches from within is with you always." Do not seek him in the sky or in the far temple. He is in your breath, in your heartbeat, in your longing. Quetzalcoatl whispers the same when light descends the pyramid. Christ whispers the same when the Spirit breathes within us. The Logos, whether feathered serpent or incarnate word, is always near. To meditate on this is to discover unity. We no longer divide myth from gospel, culture from culture, serpent from bird, human from divine. We see them as symbols of one great truth. The universe is saturated with Logos, the divine word that descends, teaches, departs, and promises return. The promise is not distant. It is already being fulfilled in every act of truth, beauty, and goodness. The cosmic Christ, the Quetzalcoatl of eternity, is alive whenever a soul awakens to love. This is the wisdom the ancients carved in stone, the wisdom the Gospels inscribed in words, the wisdom Rumi sang in verse. It is the wisdom that calls us still, to let the serpent of instinct rise on wings of spirit, to let the Logos become flesh in us, to let the cosmic Christ guide us toward Omega. Chapter 13, The Invisible City. Beneath the green canopy of the Yucatan jungle, something vast lies hidden. For centuries, the forest seemed an impenetrable wall, swallowing stones and plazas, pyramids and roads. Travelers reported mounds beneath roots, but the scale of what was concealed defied imagination. Then, with the advent of LiDAR technology, a laser eye that pierces through vegetation, the truth emerged. Whole cities, immense and interconnected, had been buried beneath the jungle for over a millennium. Streets, ball courts, aqueducts, and temples came into view. The Maya had built a civilization as grand as any on Earth, and the forest had swallowed it whole. The revelation stunned archaeologists. Thousands of previously unknown structures were revealed, turning what had seemed isolated ruins into sprawling metropolises. The invisible city had been there all along, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right vision to uncover it. This discovery is more than archaeological. It is symbolic. For within each of us lies an invisible city, a civilization of thoughts, memories, dreams, and archetypes buried beneath the overgrowth of habit and distraction. Just as the Maya cities were covered by vines and roots, so our inner cities are covered by forgetfulness, repression, neglect. Yet they remain intact, waiting for the light of attention to uncover them. James Hillman, the depth psychologist, spoke of the soul of the world, anima mundi, insisting that psyche is not confined to the individual but woven into landscapes, myths, and collective imagination. The invisible cities of the jungle mirror the invisible landscapes of soul. To find them is to remember that the world itself has an interior, that every ruin and every dream speaks from the same depth. Consider the myths of Agartha and Shambhala, legendary cities said to exist in hidden realms, beneath mountains, within inner worlds, in dimensions accessible only through spiritual vision. Travelers across cultures have told of luminous cities where sages dwell, where wisdom is preserved, where harmony reigns. Whether or not they exist in geography, they exist in psyche. They are metaphors of the invisible order, the inner community of truths that guide us even when unseen. The Maya ruins rediscovered by LiDAR teach us this lesson. What is hidden is not lost. The forest concealed but did not destroy. Likewise, our souls conceal but do not erase. Memories buried in the unconscious, truths forgotten by the conscious mind, archetypes neglected by culture, all remain. With the right tools of attention, contemplation, and imagination, we can uncover them. The LiDAR of the spirit is attention itself, the laser that cuts through distraction to reveal the city within. And what do we find there? Temples of forgotten devotion, plazas where ancient joys danced, aqueducts of meaning long dry, but still carved into our foundations. We find not only ruins, but living presences, not only the past, but seeds of the future. The invisible city within us is not dead, it is dormant. Like the buried Maya metropolises, it waits for us to see it, to restore it, to let it speak again. Hillman would urge us to approach this city not with the arrogance of conquest, but with the reverence of conversation. The psyche is not to be excavated as if it were dead stone, but engaged as if it were alive. Each ruin within us, each forgotten dream, each suppressed image has a voice. To uncover the invisible city is to listen, to let the soul of the world speak through us. Shambhala and Agartha remind us that these cities are not only individual, but collective. They're the repositories of wisdom that transcend culture, the archetypal cities where humanity remembers its destiny. To dream of them is to align with the deep order of the cosmos, to recognize that our souls are part of a greater soul, that our inner cities are neighborhoods within the infinite city of God. The Urantia Book 2 speaks of universes as vast cities of spirit, organized and alive, where souls progress from mansion to mansion, learning, growing, ascending. To contemplate invisible cities on earth is to glimpse a pattern of invisible cities in eternity, the universes themselves as metropolises of meaning, awaiting our arrival. What is most moving is the paradox. The invisible city is both lost and present, forgotten and alive, hidden and awaiting. It reminds us that the deepest truths are not destroyed by neglect. They are patient. They wait beneath the vines of time, beneath the roots of habit, until we learn to see again. Practically, this invites us into practices of uncovering, meditation, contemplation, dream work. These are forms of LiDAR for the soul. They strip away the noise, the foliage of distraction, and reveal the hidden architecture of meaning within us. To meditate is to discover the plazas of silence. To dream is to enter the temples of imagination. To reflect is to walk the avenues of memory. The invisible city also invites humility, for we often assume that what we see is all there is. The jungle looks like wilderness, but beneath it lies civilization. Our consciousness feels like surface, but beneath it lies a vast unconscious. Our world seems disenchanted, but beneath it lies the soul of the world. To remember the invisible city is to remember that reality is always more than appearance. And there is a deeper call to rebuild. The rediscovered Maya cities invite not only admiration, but restoration, preservation, renewal. Likewise, the inner cities we uncover invite us to tend them, to care for the soul, to honor the ruins, and rebuild the temples. To live without this care is to let the jungle of habit swallow us. To live with it is to participate in the restoration of the anima mundi. Rumi said, "There is a city within you where the soul walks in gardens and drinks from flowing fountains. Do not neglect this city, for it is your true home." The invisible city is that home. It is Shambhala, it is Agartha, it is the buried Maya metropolises, it is the psyche itself. To uncover it is to return home, to remember who we are. The jungle will always grow. The world will always cover over the soul. But with attention, with reverence, with imagination, we can always find the city again. And when we do, we realize that it was never truly gone. It was waiting, luminous beneath the leaves, eternal beneath the passing years. Chapter 14. The Technoscience of the Gods. When we hear the word technology, we think of machines, gears, engines, silicon chips, satellites orbiting the Earth. When we hear the word spirituality, we imagine silence, prayer, contemplation, and mystery. Yet in the vision of the ancients, these two were not opposed. Technology was not merely mechanical, and spirituality was not merely inward. Together, they formed a unity, a technoscience of the sacred, a way of harnessing knowledge of the cosmos for transformation of both matter and soul. The Maya exemplified this unity. Their pyramids were not only temples but observatories. El Castillo at Chichén Itzá, aligned with equinoxes, was both liturgy and astronomy, a spiritual calendar written in stone. The observatory at Uxmal, with its rounded tower, tracked Venus, guiding agriculture and ritual. Their calendar was mathematics fused with myth, precision fused with prayer. They did not separate sky watching from soul shaping. To know the heavens was to align with them, to let cosmic order shape human order. The golden orbs discovered beneath Teotihuacán are another testament. To modern archaeologists, they are enigmatic artifacts, coated with pyrite and clay, glowing like planets when torchlight strikes. To the imagination, they are symbols of cosmic engineering. Miniature stars, inner planets, tools for a ritual technology that mirrored the heavens within the earth. They remind us that for the ancients, ritual itself was a form of science, not superstition, but a technology of meaning, a way of aligning microcosm with macrocosm. Paracelsus, centuries later in Europe, carried the same vision into alchemy. For him, chemistry was never only material but spiritual. The transformation of base metals into gold was a metaphor for the transformation of the human soul. The true philosopher's stone was not a mineral but a state of consciousness, incorruptible and luminous. This was technoscience of the gods. To take the laws of matter as analogies of spirit, to see in the processes of nature the processes of inner life. Gurdjieff, in the 20th century, used another language. Man is a machine, he said, but a machine that can awaken. He spoke of spiritual machines, not in the sense of gears and pistons, but in the sense of systems of transformation, practices that harness attention, energy, and will to create higher states of being. His dances, his exercises, his schools, these were technologies of awakening, precise methods designed to reorder the psyche. He saw what the ancients knew, that spirituality is not vague but structured, not random but engineered. What, then, does it mean to speak of the technoscience of the gods? It means to recover this unity. It means to see that the divine does not oppose reason, that spirit does not negate science, that cosmos and psyche are not alien but reflections. The gods, whether imagined as extraterrestrials or archetypes, represent knowledge advanced enough to fuse both. Their technology was not only in building cities, but in shaping souls, not only in measuring stars, but in teaching alignment with them. Modern science tends to strip away meaning, reducing the cosmos to mechanism. Modern spirituality often rejects science, retreating into feeling without structure. Both are impoverished. The ancients remind us, true knowledge is both precise and sacred. The Mayan calendar was mathematics infused with myth. Alchemy was chemistry infused with soul. Gurdjieff's practices were psychology infused with cosmology. This is technoscience, the fusion of logos and mythos, number and symbol, matter and spirit. Imagine a Mayan priest standing atop the pyramid, observing Venus with naked eye and ritual calendar. For him, Venus is not only a planet but a god, not only an orbit but a message. Its rising and setting marks cycles of war and peace, planting and harvest, death and renewal. His calculations are precise, but his meaning is spiritual. He is both scientist and mystic, engineer and poet. The separation we impose between astronomer and priest did not exist for him. He embodied the techno-science of the gods. And what of us? We hold satellites in orbit, telescopes that see to the edge of the universe, machines that decode DNA. Yet our souls often feel hollow, our rituals absent, our meaning scattered. We have science without spirit. The ancients had both. Their techno-science may not have built rockets, but it built civilizations aligned with stars, calendars aligned with eternity, rituals aligned with psyche. Perhaps the challenge of our age is not to dismiss their knowledge as primitive, but to learn again how to unite what we have divided. The Urantia book points in this direction. It describes the cosmos as a vast order, universe teeming with structure and intelligence. Science, it affirms, is not opposed to spirit, but the handwriting of God. To study the laws of nature is to study the ways of the divine. The adjuster within us interprets this order, guiding us not only to understand but to embody. Technoscience, in this light, is not about domination but about harmony, aligning our lives with cosmic law, using knowledge not for control but for communion. Teilhard de Chardin envisioned the same in his concept of the omega point. Evolution, he argued, is both biological and spiritual, both scientific and mystical. The technologies we build are not meaningless. They're steps toward greater union, provided they are infused with love. Without love, science becomes destructive. With love, it becomes techno-science of the sacred, a way of bringing humanity into convergence. The golden orbs, the Maya observatories, Paracelsian alchemy, Gurdjieff's machines, all point to this truth. The gods, whether literal or symbolic, represent the integration we still lack. They are reminders that knowledge without wisdom is dangerous, and wisdom without knowledge is weak. True power is the marriage of the two. The ancients intuited this, encoding it in ritual and architecture. We must remember it, encoding it in our science and our spirituality today. Practically, this invites us to treat our own lives as laboratories of sacred technology. Meditation is a technology of attention. Prayer is a technology of longing. Music is a technology of resonance. Ritual is a technology of alignment. Even love itself is a technology, the most advanced of all, shaping us into beings capable of communion. These are not vague feelings, but precise methods, disciplines honed over centuries. They are techno-science of the soul. The danger lies in forgetting the sacred dimension. When we strip science of spirit, we build weapons instead of wisdom. When we strip spirit of science, we drift into illusion instead of transformation. The gods remind us that both belong together. To honor them is to recover this unity. To live their techno-science is to practice knowledge as devotion, to practice devotion as knowledge. And perhaps this is why myths speak of gods as builders. They construct cities, order heavens, shape humans. They are engineers of cosmos and psyche alike. Their temples were not only places of worship, but machines of alignment, where architecture, astronomy, and ritual fused. Their myths were not stories alone, but technologies of memory, transmitting truths across generations. The techno-science of the gods is nothing less than the art of building worlds of meaning. So let us look again at the golden orbs beneath Teotihuacán. They are not toys or curiosities. They are reminders. They remind us that knowledge shines when infused with symbol, that science glows when touched by spirit. They remind us that the true technology is not only outside, but inside, not only in clay and gold, but in soul and spirit. They remind us that the greatest machine is the human being awakened, the greatest laboratory the human heart transformed. This is the techno-science of the gods, to fuse matter and spirit, science and devotion, number and myth, so that knowledge becomes wisdom and wisdom becomes love. The Maya practiced it in their calendars. Paracelsus practiced it in his alchemy. Gurdjieff practiced it in his schools. We are called to practice it in our age, to heal the split, to remember the unity, to live as both scientists and mystics, engineers and poets, children of earth and children of heaven. For in the end, the true machine of the gods is love. All knowledge converges there. All technology must serve it. Without it, we may build towers, but they crumble. With it, even the smallest act becomes eternal. The techno-science of the gods is not a lost secret. It is waiting in us. It is the feathered serpent in our minds, the golden orb in our souls, the observatory of attention in our hearts. To live it is to remember that science and spirit are not two, but one, that we ourselves are the laboratories of the divine. Chapter 15, The Gift of the Gods, Knowledge. Across the ruins of Mesoamerica, one theme shines brighter than gold, brighter than temples or pyramids. The gods gave knowledge. They bestowed calendars, agriculture, astronomy, architecture, the weaving of cloth, the measuring of time, the planting of maize. They descended not to dazzle with lightning bolts or fire, but to teach, to transmit order, to awaken intelligence. This, more than anything else, was their gift, not riches, not weapons, not spectacles, but wisdom. Giorgio Tsoukalos, in his bold interpretations, calls knowledge the currency of the universe. But if we strip away the sensationalism and read with spiritual eyes, we see a truth. Knowledge is indeed the universal gift, the most precious treasure, the seed from which all civilizations grow. When myths speak of gods descending, what they deliver is not mere power but understanding, the ability to see patterns, to align with the cosmos, to live in harmony with reality. The Urantia book affirms this through its concept of progressive revelation. Truth is not given all at once. It is unfolded across ages, each epoch receiving what it can bear, each culture gifted according to its need and capacity. The gods do not overwhelm but guide, planting seeds of knowledge that grow into trees of wisdom. The adjuster within us does the same, whispering fragments of eternity, adjusting our thoughts slowly, shaping us toward greater understanding. Revelation is always progressive because humanity is always growing. Jung, too, saw knowledge not as accumulation of facts, but as individuation, the process of becoming whole, of integrating the unconscious with the conscious, the archetypes with the ego. Knowledge in this sense is self-knowledge, not narcissism, but depth, the awakening of the self within. Myths of gods bestowing wisdom mirror this process. They describe the descent of insight from the collective unconscious, the sudden illumination that transforms not only cultures but souls. To call knowledge the gift of the gods is to recognize that the greatest miracle is not spectacle but understanding. Fire is wondrous, but the knowledge of how to use it is greater. Temples inspire awe, but the knowledge of why they were built is deeper. Miracles may dazzle, but wisdom endures. The gods who descended did not leave us piles of treasure. They left us truths that continue to bear fruit. And yet, knowledge is not neutral. It can wound or heal, build or destroy. The myth of Prometheus reminds us, fire can warm or burn, create civilization or chaos. The gift of the gods is therefore also a responsibility. To receive knowledge is to receive the call to use it wisely, to align it with love, to transform it into wisdom. Without love, knowledge becomes power. With love, knowledge becomes salvation. This is where the techno-science of the gods, explored before, converges with wisdom. The Maya built observatories to track Venus. But why? Not for conquest, but for alignment, for ritual, for harmony with cycles of planting and harvest. Their knowledge was not divorced from meaning. It was wedded to it. The true gift was not data, but integration. The ability to live as part of a cosmos infused with order. The Urantia book expands this vision to cosmic scale. It describes revelation as the gradual education of humanity, leading us from primitive fears to mature faith. Prophets, teachers, even the incarnations of divine sons are not magicians but educators, revealing the Father's love in ways adapted to our growth. Knowledge is the currency of the universe because wisdom is the pathway to communion. To know is to awaken. To awaken is to become like God. Teilhard de Chardin saw knowledge as evolutionary energy, propelling humanity toward the omega point. For him, the true future of humanity was not only technological but spiritual, a new sphere, a collective mind infused with consciousness of God. Every discovery, every truth was a step in this convergence. The gift of the gods is not to replace our effort, but to guide it, to ensure that our knowledge bends toward wisdom, that our evolution bends toward love. The danger, of course, is forgetting this. Modernity has multiplied knowledge, but often severed it from wisdom. We know more than any culture before us, yet often live more anxiously, more destructively. We have data without meaning, information without transformation. The ancients remind us that knowledge must be sacred, that truth must be wedded to spirit. Otherwise, the gift becomes a curse. And this is why Jung insisted on individuation, because knowledge of the world without knowledge of self leads to imbalance. We conquer the stars but ignore our shadows, harness atoms but neglect our souls. To integrate the unconscious, to know the archetypes, to face the serpent and the bird within. This is the knowledge that saves. The gods who descend into myth do not only bring calendars, they bring mirrors. They teach us to see ourselves, to integrate, to become whole. The greatest gift, then, is not knowledge as possession, but knowledge as transformation. It is the wisdom that changes how we see, how we live, how we love. It is the logos that reorders chaos, the insight that brings light to shadow. This is why revelation in Urantia is progressive, because wisdom is not about accumulation, but about integration, about the gradual reorientation of life toward truth, beauty, and goodness. What does this mean for us today? It means we must recover reverence for knowledge. Not reverence for data, not worship of information, but reverence for wisdom. We must treat every truth as a gift, not a weapon. We must ask, not only what can I do with this, but what does this teach me about how to live? The gods gave calendars not to boast of cycles, but to teach patience. They gave astronomy not to glorify stars, but to align with eternity. They gave myths not to control, but to awaken. Rumi, in his endless verses, reminds us that the true teacher is the one who awakens the student to the knowledge already within. Do not seek the friend in the distance, he says, for he is in your breath, nearer than near. The gift of the gods is not only outer teaching, but inner awakening. The reminder that the logos lives within us, that the adjuster whispers even now, that wisdom is already planted in the soil of our souls. Thus, the last and greatest gift of the gods is not spectacle but silence, not miracles but meaning. It is the awakening of the inner teacher, the recognition that knowledge is already flowing within, that we are already temples of the Logos. The gods who descended have departed, but their true gift remains, the capacity to know, to awaken, to become. To live this is to treat every day as revelation. Every experience can teach, every failure can instruct, every joy can illuminate. The adjuster translates even pain into wisdom, even error into growth. Jung would say that even the shadow, when faced, becomes teacher. Teilhard would say that even struggle, when endured, bends toward Omega. The gods gave us not perfection, but process, not completion, but capacity. The gift is not answers, but the ability to learn. And this is perhaps the greatest miracle, that we can grow, that we can change, that we can awaken. Temples crumble, civilizations vanish, myths evolve, but the capacity to know remains, the adjuster remains, the Logos remains. This is the eternal gift, the currency of the universe, the seed of all progress. So let us honor the gods not with sacrifices, but with learning. Let us build temples not only of stone, but of wisdom. Let us see in every discovery the echo of their descent, in every insight the sign of their presence. For knowledge is not ours alone. It is a gift, a trust, a flame passed from the divine to humanity. To use it well is to honor them. To turn it into wisdom is to embody them. To live it in love is to become like them. This is the culmination of myth and revelation, psychology and spirit, Urantia and Jung. The gift of the gods is knowledge, but knowledge transfigured into wisdom, wisdom transfigured into love. This is the greatest miracle, the true descent, the lasting legacy, and it is ours to live. Epilogue: The return of Kukulcán. At the steps of Chichén Itzá, the sun begins its slow descent, and shadows gather on the western face of the pyramid. As the light bends, triangles of brightness and darkness descend the stairway. Then, as evening deepens, the serpent of light rises once more, crawling skyward, vanishing into the heavens. The crowd that gathers each year to witness this phenomenon gasps, not because they're fooled by illusion, but because they sense a deeper truth. Myth is not dead. The serpent still lives, still descends, still ascends. Kukulcán has never truly left. The ancients carved stone and aligned stars to remind us of this truth. But the real temple is not only El Castillo, it is the human soul. We are stairways of light and shadow, our lives sculpted into platforms of experience, our choices shaping the play of brilliance and darkness. Within us, the serpent of wisdom still descends and ascends, still teaches and departs, still promises to return. The myth lives because we live it. The return of Kukulcán is not a date on a calendar. It is a possibility in every moment. Throughout this journey, we have followed gods and myths, calendars and caves, golden orbs and invisible cities. We have listened to Jung and Eliade, Teilhard and Paracelsus, Rumi and Gurdjieff. We have wandered through the pages of the Urantia book and walked the avenues of Teotihuacán. Yet all these paths converge here at this realization. The true descent of the gods is within, and the true return is in our awakening. The Serpent of Light is more than an astronomical play. It is an archetype, an eternal pattern of descent and ascent, of incarnation and transcendence, of death and resurrection. It is Christ descending and ascending. It is Quetzalcoatl arriving and departing. It is the Logos becoming flesh and returning to spirit. It is every soul that descends into darkness only to rise into light. To see the serpent of Kukulcán on the pyramid is to see our own destiny written in stone and shadow. This is why myth matters. It is not fiction to be dismissed, nor history to be dissected, but reality to be lived. Myths are mirrors of the eternal within the temporal, the archetypal within the personal, the cosmic within the human. To say that Kukulcán returns is to say that wisdom never dies, that truth always comes again, that love is always reborn. The myth is alive because it is the structure of our own souls. The Maya waited for the return of Kukulcán. Christians wait for the return of Christ. Mystics wait for the dawn after night. But perhaps the waiting is itself the return. Each moment we awaken to truth, each time we choose love over fear, each step we take toward integration, the serpent rises. The return of the God is not only cosmic but personal, not only collective but intimate. It happens whenever a soul becomes a temple, whenever light descends into shadow and ascends again. And so the invitation is clear: live as a living temple. Let your thoughts be the platforms, your actions the steps, your love the head of the serpent that meets the earth. Let light and shadow play upon you, not as enemies but as partners in the dance of becoming. Be the stairway where heaven descends and earth ascends. Be the pyramid of living stone where myth unfolds again. The gift of the gods we have seen is knowledge. But knowledge is not complete until it becomes life. To know is not enough. We must embody. To understand is not enough. We must live. To honor Kukulcán, to honor Christ, to honor the Logos, is not only to admire, but to become what they represent. The serpent of light must rise in us. The Logos must speak through us. The divine must dwell in us. Only then is the return fulfilled. Rumi whispers, "You're not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." The serpent of Kukulcán whispers, "You are not only a temple builder. You are the temple." Christ whispers, "The kingdom of God is within you." All speak the same truth. The myth is not elsewhere, not in ruins or skies, but in you. The return is not far, but near, not tomorrow, but today, not beyond, but within. To live this is to walk with reverence. Every act becomes ritual. Every moment becomes liturgy. Every breath becomes prayer. Eating, working, loving, suffering, all become steps of the pyramid where light and shadow meet. The serpent ascends in our patience, in our compassion, in our creativity. The God returns in our forgiveness, in our courage, in our truthfulness. The myth breathes in our ordinary lives, transfiguring them into sacred. And so, at the close of this journey, let us not think of myths as past curiosities or alien visitations. Let us think of them as present invitations. The gods have not left. They wait in silence. The temples are not ruins. They are mirrors. The calendars are not expired. They are reminders. The serpent has not vanished. It is coiled in our souls, ready to rise. The true return of Kukulcán is the return of wisdom, of love, of awakening. It is the recognition that we are children of the stars and temples of the divine, bearers of knowledge and seekers of meaning, fragments of eternity wrapped in time. It is the moment we realize that the God's greatest gift is not miracles, but the ability to see the miraculous in everything. So let us live as if Kukulcán is already here. Let us speak as if the Logos already breathes in us. Let us love as if eternity is already present. The serpent of light rises when we rise, ascends when we ascend, returns when we return to ourselves. And now, dear reader, dear listener, the invitation is yours. Become the stairway, become the temple, become the living myth. Let the serpent of light ascend through you. Let the God return in your being. Let the logos shine in your words and deeds. For you are not only a seeker of wisdom, you are its dwelling place. The return of Kukulcán is not a prophecy to await, but a reality to embody. The light is already moving. The serpent is already rising. The myth is already alive. The only question is whether we will see it, whether we will live it, whether we will let ourselves become its temple. So step into the light. Be the pyramid. Be the stairway. Be the serpent of wisdom that descends and ascends. Be the living temple of the divine. The gods have given their gift. Now it is ours to live it. And if you enjoyed this content, please leave a comment where you're from, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to the channel. Every day we bring new videos to nourish the soul. Gratitude.